Thank you all for the rigorous scholarship you have presented and conversations we have all benefited from. I hope you have the opportunity to advance existing collaborations and to expand your network of scholars. I also want to thank Katya and Matthew for their innovative approach to the conference, for their appreciation of the role of the conference within the programming at ISA, and for how they model successful and supportive academic relationships. I also want to thank Katya and Matthew for their moral clarity. I have known both of them for a number of years inside and outside ISA. I've admired their commitments to our profession, their teaching, and their scholarship. In particular, I admire the ways they model the role of an engaged scholar speaking from our unique positions to the troubles facing the world and embracing voices from around the world in these efforts. So I thank them for their reminders about the world we live in now. The annual virtual conference grew out of our experience with our annual convention amidst COVID lockdowns and travel uncertainties related to the pandemic. Realizing what this platform was capable of, we shifted 2 years ago to an annual model for a virtual conference providing an accessible global platform, not subject to the emergence of new restrictions on travel mobility, rising costs associated with travel, and the burden placed on the planet by our individual and collective travel. For scholars around the world, that means ISA is committed to featuring groundbreaking scholarship across multiple platforms to amplify the variety of voices speaking to key questions in international, regional, and comparative studies.
Hi, my name is Siba Grovogi. I'm the current president of the International Studies Association. I'm doing this recording to thank everyone for participating at the virtual ISA convention in 2025. I want to start by thanking all the wonderful people at headquarters who made this possible. And I really mean it when I say that we will not be doing what we do without them, though they are often invisible to us. I also wanted to thank Matthew Waits and Katya Confortini, the program co-chairs. Program co-chairs, it takes a lot to be a program co-chair. It is usually a non-rewarded service. I mean, it's rewarding for them because they get to see all our papers, all the things that we are thinking about, and etc., etc. But it takes a lot of labor put in. And just as an example of that, I want to tell you, participants, that they received, the program co-chair received 243 papers, put together 243 papers for a total of 62 panels and roundtables this year. And as you can see, through the themes and topics that they covered, that they put together in an amazing conference, we are all grateful to them, to Matthew Waits and Katya Confortini. We meet at this time, at a time of great challenges, when, and I don't have to tell you that, we are compelled to re-examine our collective and individual values, as well as the extent to which we should adhere or not, reform or not, the principles, norms, and mechanisms of the international system, together with the modes of operation and governance of the international order, international organization, including ours, ISA, states, big and small, etc. It is not therefore surprising, given those concerns, that the themes of the conference this year extended from topics like global inequality, including in power and wealth, relationship between the global south and the global north, the challenges posed by post-colonial existence, meaning whether there's an international system that really overcomes the legacies of colonialism, of racial discrimination, of gender discrimination, of ethnic discrimination, sexual, and etc., etc. The place of memory in our interactions, the kind of script that we all bring to the table when we meet, whether they are conflicting, convergent, or contradictory, and our narratives and deliberation. The themes also include the modes of adjudication of conflict in times of war, especially in these times where from Gaza to Ukraine, to Sudan, to Myanmar, and Congo and beyond, we see conflict whose magnitude are quickly exceeding our capacity to imagine our ethical regimes. And of course, at the time of looming ecological crisis, it's not surprising that our virtual conference organizers included topics on the ecology. I'm actually happy to be, despite everything that is happening around us today, to be president of the IC at this particular moment, because I think I've grown to admire our membership. I have to say it. We have had a lot of tension, obviously, but what most of us have managed to retain is a sense of responsibility and of perspective in this environment, to listen to others and to be able to appreciate where we are all coming from, and to know that we are all, in this association, we have all one primary concern. It is our remit. It is to speak to and about the health of the international system and our planet, our communities, in the relation, through the kind of relations people maintain, whether they were political, cultural, economic, scientific, and etc. I am not surprised, therefore, that the organizers of the conference, virtual conference this year, were comfortable enough including all perspectives, and that they did not leave any available perspective, that is available to us today, no matter their cultural, religious, linguistic, gender, sexual, and other sources of origination. And I'm very happy for that, because one of the dangers for us today is actually the question of parochialism. Whether we can be too absorbed into ourselves, our perspective, and in terms of war and conflict, our hurts, our memories, our positions, and etc. And whether we can overcome them to look at the universal, what binds us, the human, our own fate as human beings, and humanitarianism, how we ought to handle one another in terms of violence, whether they are communal, state, or they emanate from the international organization. We have a role to play, central role to play at the ISA, to fight in that context intolerance, whether it's against immigrants, transsexuals, Jews, Muslims, Blacks, the Chinese. And I have to say that because there seems to be an unrecognized xenophobia also rising around the world today, and of course other kinds of discrimination and prejudices and etc. And we have to guard against all of those, because our job, in fact, central to our jobs today is creating an environment of acceptance and tolerance so that we can carry forth our academic duties. It is in this context that the theme of this year's virtual conference was evidence. We actually need evidence. Evidence comes in not only when we present cases, we put forth cases, like I have evidence for this and that, but evidence also is often used when we talk about the wisdom we get. What is something evidence of? No matter what the evidence that supports, whether it's the evidence that supports our argument or what something is of evidence or demonstrative or illustrative of, we actually need to converge on understanding and at the level of method and epistemes to be careful about how we use evidence, because at some point, our modes of communication depend on other people being able to relate, to understand, and to relate to our own evidence. Otherwise, we don't have communicative discourses. We cannot communicate unless we can have a modicum of agreement on evidence. It is also why we have to avoid parochialism. Like, some things we ought to accept that they are actually part of the human trajectory. Wars have been, the Holocaust and now Gaza are part of our collective memory. No matter how hard it is for us to accept it. Gender violence has been part of our inheritance, obviously, and we have to accept that. Prejudice against the sexually divergent or different, against those who are of different religions and etc., is also part of it. So along with evidence, we actually have to be able to agree at the level of memory, which is one of the central themes of this conference also. We have to agree that some things are actually a matter of fact, no longer to be disputed. We do not have to dispute. We do not have to argue around something. Colonialism happened, enslavement happened, the Holocaust happened, the Gaza genocide is happening. A lot of things are happening, and we have to just accept them. And the question, we have to accept them, because if we don't accept some things as fact, we cannot actually find our way toward peaceful resolutions. Peaceful resolution toward justice and equality, because that's what actually we all aim for. It is funny that you can argue that certain words are missing in a lot of languages, but the words that are common to all languages on this planet are justice and equality, actually. They exist they exist in real languages. Some things are missing, organization, you can argue, but and it means that the human mind's converges always toward the recognition that human beings are prone to have differences, and those differences might lead to violence and conflict, or vice versa. And so I'm glad that we are placing this question of evidence, no matter our religious, cultural, linguistic, gender, sexual, and other differences, that we can actually talk about evidence. We have to argue around things that are demonstrable. Truth matters. Truth matters. So there's a direct relationship between truth, justice, and peace. And we cannot have truth if we don't have evidence. We may argue about the nature of the evidence, but if they are understandable to us, if they are relatable to us, then we are in a better place. I'm very glad that you had a very successful conference this year, and I hope we carry the same spirit of conviviality, of differences within respectful engagement, to be able to disagree without being disagreeable, and to be able to accept that not every criticism it comes from a place of antipathy. Sometimes the criticism, even if we don't like the language of it, comes from a place of concern for most of us. And as an association, I'm happy to be a member of this ISA, an organization that started as an American concern and became truly global by expanding progressively over the years. And having been around, I know that the ISA has really made a long strides in trying to be inclusive and to be truly global. And in fact, one of the growing pains of the ISA now is to figure out what it means to be a truly global association. And that's a theme for another time. Thank you. I thank you for your participation. I thank you for your patience. I thank you for your committee, your ability to hear other people. And I look forward to seeing you, for those who can, in Columbus, Ohio. Thank you very much.
As this third virtual conference of the International Studies Association draws to a close, we're here again with you as program chairs. I am Katia Confortini from Wellesley College in the US.
And I'm Matthew Waits from University of Glasgow in the UK.
We saw that you participated actively in the conference and were intellectually and politically stimulated by the presentations and the dialogues. We have ourselves been participating and have been learning from the sessions across many diverse themes. We know that the experience of this virtual conference can feel less integrated than other conferences because it is accessed online and it is structured across many time slots to be accessible in different time zones globally. Nevertheless, we hope you agree that this format spread across time is important for the more globally inclusive approach that we are trying to achieve together. Participation in panels not well aligned with your time zone is certainly challenging, but well worth the effort, given that it is one way to promote valuable global dialogue.
In our remarks as program chairs in the opening session of the conference, we encouraged participants to approach the conference programme as a whole, to survey various panels that we designed, and to spotlight multiple themed sessions. However, in our closing remarks now, we want to offer some more personal observations, especially ones concerning academic knowledge production in this space and its relationship to politics, social change, and conflicts in the world today. We're struck by how many papers at the virtual conference have reflected shifts in global power relations and associated scholarship. There has been a noticeably significant number of papers focused on India, China, and Asia generally, particularly when seen relative to papers at the in-person annual ISA convention held in the US or Canada. We also have the impression that there seems to have been a somewhat better proportion of papers from the Global South and with Global South perspectives generally, again relative to the annual in-person ISA convention. This is not, however, an isolated event, but rather, as Executive Director MJ Bozier said in their remarks, it's inscribed in the larger direction that the organization is taking, with conferences such as the mid-year one in Mexico, the regional conference in Sao Paulo, as well as other initiatives underway. Your paper submissions have enabled us to create panel titles and abstracts that have sought to bring this shifting focus to the forefront. We positioned some panels with Global South perspectives up front in the programme on the first day in an attempt to put global power relations into view from the outset. We also sought, however, to avoid a homogenizing approach by constructing panels on specific geopolitical regions like South Asia and Southeast Asia, the Middle East, and the African continent.
Furthermore, the more open format of the virtual conference is unlike that of the main annual conference by not structuring sessions into streams organized by sections or caucuses. This seems to allow for more cross-cutting dialogues and exchanges along methodological and epistemological lines, all the while employing multiple kinds of evidence. In this way, we feel that the virtual conference stands as a valuable reminder of the need to step out of our academic silos, not to be constrained by narrow themes or sectional interests, and to engage in more interdisciplinary, intersectional, and sometimes transgressive dialogues across borders and boundaries. By designing the conference sessions to have a variety of thematic framings, in combination with specific regional frames in some cases, we have sought to enable and promote different kinds of exchanges and dialogues from those to be found elsewhere at the ISA or beyond. We would be interested in your feedback on the extent to which this has worked.
We are also struck by how many of the papers and hence panels showed engagement with cutting-edge forms of technological change, which is a crucial dimension for understanding current social and political change. For example, one panel addressed space politics, with one paper considering how China's Belt and Road Initiative uses digital technology as well as practices like road building to link land and sea. Another looking at connectivity via submarine cables under the Indian Ocean, and yet another looking at space exploration and colonization from a decolonial perspective. The emerging theme of connectivity across boundaries seemed to have interesting positive potential, in some contrast to more conventional and often realist, although not only realist, concerns with war and conflict. Another panel looked at hybrid warfare, grey zones, and new threats to consider war and security in a digital age. Further panels looked at artificial intelligence and digital authoritarianism, and at close encounters of technology and security.
The theme of technology has also emerged in individual papers across panels. Such has been the case, for example, of the paper on digital norms entrepreneurs in the panel on politics and civil society. So we were struck that authors were rising to the challenge of examining long-standing themes of war, foreign policy, territorial disputes, and colonization by considering the new implications of advanced technologies, including how they are being used to further oppression and violence, or, by contrast, how they can promote democracy and/or justice.
From my own perspective, as someone working in global historical sociology and international political sociology with respect to colonialisms and colonialities, I have found the conference format enables useful interdisciplinary dialogues between fields such as politics and IR, sociology, history, and law. I have been gladdened to see how the virtual conference distinctively is not structured by streams associated with ISA sections or caucuses, and my feeling is that this open submission format has enabled us as program chairs to create panels that are more topic-based, thematically based, or regionally based in ways that move across and somewhat transcend the stream divisions familiar from the main annual convention. This has seemed, on the whole, productive and beneficial. I would particularly say it has enabled us to bring focus to specific states such as Colombia, India, China, and Russia, but more distinctively, I see signs of global historical sociology type of approaches becoming more apparent, for example, in a valuable paper on the Ottoman Empire. Approaches that displace the state in favor of more focus on colonialism, colonialities, and colonial legacies have an important relevance to analyzing many current power relations and conflicts. The openness of the virtual conference format seems to hold potential for facilitating new dialogues, enabling interdisciplinary innovations, and for ongoing creativity in fostering intellectual exchanges. We have also sought to foreground Indigenous politics with the panel Indigenous Politics and Thought. As new formations of imperialism and coloniality emerge and take ever-changing shapes, our call as international studies scholars is to analyze and try to understand these formations, as well as study the corresponding modes of resistance coming from multiple segments of society, perhaps especially those not historically considered relevant in the field. These are areas, therefore, that we hope future conferences can see more submissions and more extensive discussion.
We were moved by President Siba Grovogi's statement in the opening session about his aspirations for the field of international studies. He said, "It should free all of us, make us all citizens of the world, subjects of rights, and deserving of a better future." He also referred to the need to focus back on the most basic question, and I quote again, "How do we save the human?"
We share his vision, and in relation to our own remarks in the opening session, and here again, we are speaking as individual scholars, not on behalf of ISA. These comments speak to our responsibilities as scholars not to turn away from the multiple ongoing and atrocious rights violations across the world, and in this moment in time, especially away from the situation in Gaza. Since we recorded our remarks, the situation has further worsened to the point that the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said on 28th of July that, quote, "Nothing can justify the obliteration of Gaza that is unfolding before the eyes of the world, the starvation of the population, the killing of tens of thousands of civilians."
To this end, we note the circulation of an academic petition calling for academic professional associations to take a position on the unfolding genocide in Gaza. The petition is titled "Stop the Silence: academic associations must recognize the genocide in Gaza. We concur with this petition's calls to 1. Publicly recognize the genocide. 2. Amend existing official statements on Gaza to reflect the full scope, gravity, and responsibility of the crisis. 3. Call for immediate international intervention, including a permanent ceasefire, unrestricted humanitarian access, and legal accountability for war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. 4. Defend academic freedom for those who research, teach, and advocate on Palestine. 5. Provide direct support to displaced and targeted scholars, students, and healthcare professionals. And 6. Fund and promote research into the public health, psychological, medical, socio-political, and economic consequences of the genocide in Gaza.
We also note that there is a specific petition addressed to the leadership of ISA. Our overall concern is that in the face of crimes such as the ones committed by Israel in Gaza, there can be no academic neutrality.
From a personal perspective, while grateful for the community of scholars that is the International Studies Association, I have to admit that I have struggled to be at the conference at all, and increasingly in the last days. When Palestinian scholars and students and their families are killed, starved, trapped in the open-air target practice zone that is Gaza currently, even being in this space, and indeed even continuing my scholarship as if nothing as earth-shattering as this was happening, has seemed a distraction, a turning away from my responsibilities as a scholar activist and indeed as a human being. Security for all cannot be built on the extermination of some, or else we have not learned anything from 300,000 years of humankind history. I am heartened at the same time at the many papers in this conference that have directly addressed the existential questions facing our world, including and especially the problem of violence, which, to use again Siba Grovogi's words, and I quote, has exceeded our moral capacities to judge, end of quote. The efforts of many of our ISA colleagues over this past year and a half, and culminating in the petition already mentioned, as well as the Academic Freedom Committee's roundtable on the ISA policies and practices, are a motivation for me to continue the collective work of imagining a discipline of the future, to quote Siba again. I look forward to the day when ISA will become the community with the courage to take a stand.
With respect to wider issues of equality, diversity, and inclusion in conference participation, we are conscious that this is an area requiring ongoing work, and we would emphasize that much of that work needs to be in encouraging and making space for wider global participation. This has to be done in substantial and not perfunctory ways. As program chairs, we would note that a significant factor limiting our selection of panel chairs and discussants was that there were only a limited number of volunteers for such roles in the database. So while we thank all those of you who have taken on several hats in this conference, especially as discussants and chairs, and who've agreed to serve in multiple panels sometimes, we would also highly encourage you to spread the word for people to volunteer as discussants and chairs in the virtual conference in the future, so they are placed in the database of potential volunteers. In this way, many of us can play a role in making the conference more diverse, more inclusive, and more oriented towards equality and equity.
Finally, we want to thank all of those at ISA headquarters who have made this conference and your participation possible and our job easier. First, we would like to thank former and current ISA presidents Marijke Bruning and Siba Grogi, as well as Executive Director MJ Bosia for their invitation to serve as program chairs and for introducing us to each other, for their support to ourselves and their continued support of the ISA virtual conference.
We wish to specifically recognise Executive Director MJ Bosia for leadership in changing the virtual conference fees from a single fee to a spectrum of fees, with the lowest fee substantially lower than before, as we mentioned in our opening remarks. When we suggested addressing this issue, we had the feeling that we could be pushing at an open door because we know MJ's long-term commitment to addressing inclusion in ISA. For example, in his former role as chair of the Committee on Representation and Diversity, we greatly appreciate that by taking action to reduce fees for those with less resources, MJ has again shown that they are someone who not only talks about inclusion, but does the work to actually change practices.
And we are also especially grateful to ISA headquarters staff for their support and guidance over the past several months. Lauren Perez Bonilla has been an indispensable interlocutor. She has kept us on track, guided us patiently, and given us historical context and knowledge that helped us to learn from past virtual program chairs. Lauren also played a crucial role in making the new fee structure a reality. The entire ISA systems team, especially Mary Hartford, Adelina Mkami, and Jason DeAngelis, were instrumental in helping us through technological challenges. And Kat Foker coordinated the allocation of technical moderators to each conference session. The technical moderators, all of whom also are volunteers, were instrumental in ensuring that the sessions ran smoothly. Thank you too. And we would like to thank each other as program chairs for this partnership throughout. Thank you, Matthew.
And I thank Katia. We both feel that we have worked well together as partners and have learned a lot from each other. Especially, and again, we would like to thank you, paper presenters, discussants, and chairs, for your contributions to the virtual conference and for your engagement and commitment. Quite literally, nothing in the conference would have been possible without you. We hope that the conference has left you more motivated to push forward with the kinds of critical research and dialogue that are needed to address the serious problems facing the world today, and to continue to develop together this community of international studies that is the International Studies Association. Thank you, and we hope to see you next year.
By way of conclusion, I want to provide you with some sense of the wealth of opportunities available to ISA members through our programming. In addition to our annual convention and conferences throughout the year, at isanet.org, you will find a number of resources available just a click away on our main page. We have a wealth of virtual programming with new seminars offered several times a month through the virtual programming link, where you can submit a proposal or access our YouTube library and podcasts. Members also have free access to all our journals. As well, our members appreciate access to job postings from institutions around the world, and we will soon be launching a resources page for members with significant advice and guidance for achieving a rewarding academic career. You can also look forward to our internal blog, which will enable our members to engage in discussions about the association, our policies and practices, their individual perspectives on the world, the challenges we face as a profession, and other concerns that are always at the top of our minds. The blog will be launched shortly. Also coming will be a reminder about submissions for the award for Best Paper presented at the virtual conference. For those of you with the means to add your financial support to these initiatives, I encourage you to click on the donate button on the upper right of our homepage. Your support is necessary as ISA members are committed to an academic society that is unique, at the forefront of knowledge building around the world through a multiplicity of platforms and affordable access to all programming. Thank you again to all our presenters and to the panel chairs and discussants who did the necessary and often unsung work necessary to conference success. I also want to thank everyone who has made the conference planning so smooth and the platform participation seamless, from all of our staff in the executive office to the volunteers who are providing you with necessary support. With all my appreciation, I hope to see you all soon.